Exclusive information has just been leaked about the newest Super Smash Bros. Game. Due to budget cuts, only 26 characters will be returning, and because of really weird studio mandates, they all have to begin with a different letter. I don't know, Nintendo has been doing some weird things since Reggie left. This video is a silly little challenge where I imagine the best Super Smash Bros. Roster I can, where every character has to begin with a unique letter. So if I pick M for Mario, I can't pick any other characters whose names also begin with M. This probably sounds like an insane prospect that's gonna result in a really bad roster, and yes, it's weird, but maybe not as weird as you'd think in the end. Hopefully I can make a regular, coherent roster for an alphabetical Smash Bros. That would satisfy fans who just want veterans back, while also including interesting newcomers. Obviously, there have to be a few newcomers because of the format of the roster. Please remember, this is a silly challenge and not an actual pitch for the next Smash Bros. Game, or don't, because it's good engagement if you get angry at me in the comments. The only big rule to establish is that I have to go by the names that characters are commonly called in North America. So I can't cheat by adding Mario and J for Jumpman instead of M for Mario, for example. Otherwise, I could just bend a bunch of characters' names and this would effectively just be a roster for another Smash game, but significantly downsized. Non-Nintendo characters are allowed for this roster, but since it's so small, I want Nintendo characters to be the main focus. Some of the letters just have pretty much no Nintendo characters associated with them, so I will have to fill it out with some third parties, and it makes a more interesting roster. With all that said, let's get into my roster for Alpha Smash. Every Super Smash Bros. Game has always featured the original 12 characters, who debuted as playable characters in the original N64 game, so they're a good place to start to get our bases covered. Luckily, there are only 2 of them that have the same starting letter, Link and Luigi. Sorry Luigi, but adding the main character of The Legend of Zelda is much more important than another Mario bro, especially with a lot of other Mario characters getting the opportunity to be on this roster. There aren't a lot of other characters besides Yoshi whose name begins with Y. Sorry to Little Mac too, I guess. Pikachu's name beginning with P does mean that both Peach and Pit are missing out on this roster, which are the other really bad casualties of a competitive battle for the P spot. Why did I phrase it like this? To clarify, all of this means C is for Captain Falcon, D for Donkey Kong, F for Fox, J for Jigglypuff, K for Kirby, L for Link, M is for Mario, N for Ness, P for Pikachu, S for Samus, and Y for Yoshi. Only one of the original 12 being cut is pretty good, and I think that me realizing this was kinda what made me realize the roster idea is actually feasible. Some people think Jigglypuff should be cut in a future Smash game, but I think it's kinda lame, and there aren't that many characters beginning with J. Now that that's taken care of, I might as well get the more boring stuff out of the way. The first party veterans who would be returning from past games. B for Bowser, I is for Inkling, O is for Olimar, R is for Robin, V is for Villager, W is for Wario, and Z is for Zelda. These are the character picks that are mostly for maintenance, so that all the big Nintendo franchises can get enough representation. Even though space is limited, I still wanted to make sure a few series get multiple characters. Although the debate on whether I should add Wario or Wii Fit Trainer was in my mind longer than you'd expect, and Wii Fit Trainer was nearly on this list, but I've just felt like Wario had to be here, especially with there not being many opportunities to add villains. Guess I could have added Wolf, but did we really need him? Robin ended up as the one Fire Emblem character, mostly due to process of elimination. Marth, Ike, Byleth, and pretty much everyone start with letters that already have a way more important character taking up the slot. Roy also starts with an R, but I think Robin is a lot better at representing Fire Emblem, and is probably the more iconic character, even though Roy definitely has his place in Smash history. Fire Emblem Awakening is such a big game for Fire Emblem that Robin is actually a pretty solid choice for if the series had to just have one character in Smash, at least in my opinion. While I'm on the subject of Nintendo's anime-styled RPGs, rest in peace to Xenoblade Chronicles, Believe it or not, there are bigger characters whose names start with S, P, and N, so Shulk, Pyra, and Mythra were all out prioritized. Same with R and Rex. I think I have some ways to make up for the lack of RPG characters besides Pokemon, so that's good at least. Zelda being in Z should be no surprise. There were more video game characters that begin with Z than I thought after looking them up. Not any who are gonna compete with Zelda realistically, but I have to give some respect to Zazalamel and Zangief. It is for Ayumi Tachibana. She's the most recognizable character from the Famicom Detective Club series and would have a moveset similar to Phoenix Wright in Marvel vs. Capcom based around investigation. There's not a lot of characters in this roster that come from Nintendo series that aren't already represented on the roster, so Ayumi gets to be here in the very competitive A category. As with E, I went with Eevee. For a while, Pikachu and Jigglypuff were the only Pokemon on the roster, and I realized that I needed some more. The E slot was open, so I just ended up looking up what Pokemon names started with E. Eevee is actually a really obvious one, and I kind of didn't need to look it up at all. There's a bit of a bias towards Gen 1 and more cute characters, and I would have done it differently if I wasn't making an alphabetical Smash roster. One of the biggest series I missed out on the roster is Punch-Out, but fear not because the G category belongs to Glass Joe. He would have the exact same moveset as Little Mac, but this time there's a built-in reason for him being low tier. This is a bit of a silly one, but I figured that because all the Punch-Out characters are boxers, it's fun to add a side character over the main character. Skipping ahead a bit, the next letter I added a new Nintendo character for is T. At first I really wanted to do Takamaru. He's from another Nintendo series, and he has been a long time coming for Smash. So people are gonna hate me, but I went with Tingle instead. I don't know, I feel like Zelda is in more need of a new character than the mysterious Murasame Castle because of the size of the franchise, and like it or not, Tingle is a big and important Zelda character. If a Super Smash Bros. Game isn't pissing people off with its roster, it's not doing it right. You may have noticed a few letters blank on my list, so it's time to get to what I've been saving, the non-Nintendo characters. It's hard to believe we're done all the Nintendo characters already, but time flies when you have just 26 characters to get through. For H, I chose Hero. Even though all the Dragon Quest protagonists technically have names, Smash just refers to them all as Hero, so I'll do that too. This roster is surprisingly lacking in anime shit, so Dragon Quest just makes sense to add, especially with the size of the franchise. For Q, I chose Quote, the main character of the game Cave Story. There are slim Q pickings, but Quote is a popular Smash candidate, even aside from his name filling a very specific niche that literally nobody aside from me cares about. Smash doesn't really have any playable characters from indie games, and due to its massive influence in the field of indie games, Quote is often a popular choice, plus he's been in a fighting game before, which gives a solid picture of how he'd fight. Fittingly, following Q with the letter U is Urien, the character from Street Fighter 3. Again, this mostly has to do with game characters starting with U having slim pickings, but there are no other fighting game characters in the roster, plus very infrequent villains, so I'm taking the opportunity to add one here. Urien definitely isn't the most well-known Street Fighter character, but he has his fans, and I believe when you're dealing with fighting game characters and crossovers, you can basically add most characters before the actual faces of the franchise, because they all have such big personalities. I find Urien's place in the Street Fighter franchise to be interesting, because he's the younger brother of the main villain of Street Fighter 3, while having his own devious machinations aside from his brother's goals, and it looks really cool when they make him wear a suit. And finally, the last character is X. Like he's the character X from Mega Man X, and yes, his name isn't Mega Man X, it's just X. Since Mega Man is already in Smash, he makes sense as an addition since he's kind of a taller, cooler Mega Man. His moveset would be quite different because of the series' different available abilities though. And there we go, 26 characters for a hypothetical Super Smash Bros. Sequel, all representing one of the letters of the alphabet. But here's the thing. The 26 letters of the alphabet aren't all the characters available. There are 2 more usually used when categorizing things alphabetically: number and symbol. So I am pleased to announce the 2 super secret, extra bonus characters representing numbers and symbols. No, I'm not going to add a character for every single symbol on a keyboard. That's not how it works. The first DLC character is 2B from Nier Automata. She's been added to a ton of crossovers, and if Smash continues the way Ultimate is going, I could totally see her being added. She fills the anime RPG niche and the hack and slash niche. As for the category of symbols, this is going to be more difficult to find characters for, and I did have to cheat. My pick for the Super Smash Bros. Character to represent symbols is heart music note exclamation mark question mark, aka Geno from Super Mario RPG. This does mean that a majority of third-party characters are Square Enix, but I feel like it's something Sakurai would be okay with, considering the types of characters in Smash Ultimate and its DLC. Geno is his given name, so I am cheating here, but heart music note exclamation mark question mark is technically his actual name, and what else am I gonna pick? Geno is a super popular choice for a new Mario character, and while it doesn't make a lot of sense to add him before Peach or Luigi, I'm kind of forced to do it here. So there we go, my silly attempt at an alphabetical Super Smash Bros. Roster. I'm sure parents all around the world will buy this for their children to teach them the alphabet, as they should. Thanks for watching this silly little concept, and I'd appreciate hearing how you'd make a Smash roster with a similar concept in the comments. See you later.